Welcome to the Critical Focus channel and today's, should we say review? I'm not sure because I am just going to say upfront, I really don't know what to make of this deck, so take it for what it is, but I'm going to walk you through the Breakneck Slaughter rival decks, which has a plot card. Sorry for my coffee getting ready in the background here. So the plot card is called Impetus, or maybe it's Impetus or Impetus. A native English speaker can surely point out what's the correct pronunciation of this word. It means +1 move to each fighter that has one or more momentum counters. After the reaction step that follows an activation step, for each fighter that has one or more momentum counters, that fighter's player picks an opponent. That opponent places the scatter token in that fighter's hex and pushes the fighter X hexes in the direction indicated by the hammer symbol. So you don't actually roll the scatter. You just basically push in the way you place the hammer symbol on the scatter dice. Where X is the number of that fighter's momentum counters. Then remove that fighter's momentum counters. If that fighter cannot be pushed into a hex, that fighter is not pushed, and stagger that fighter. So let's just walk through the search objectives first, and we'll probably revisit the objectives after we read the power card allotment here, so to actually see how strong they are. First one, beat to the punch. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's successful attack action if that was the first successful attack action made in that phase, in this phase. So this is extremely strong. You could have some bad luck to lose the initiative in all 3 rounds. But even if you lose the initiative in the first round, the opponent will probably give it to you, unless they actually have this card as well. So yeah, it's going to be a very strong card, obviously, regardless of the mechanic of the actual deck. Crashing Assault is next. It's scored immediately after an activation step in which a friendly fighter with 3 or more momentum counters made 1 or more successful attack actions. Yeah, okay, that's pretty doable, I can say up front. Basically every card in the Ploy deck and the upgrade deck here is giving you or giving the opponent momentum counters in one shape or form. So it's going to be very scoreable. Next up is Gale Force. Scores immediately after your warband's 3rd or subsequent attack action in the same phase. That's going to be extremely strong as well. It does not require successful attacks. Just do 3 attacks in a round and you're safe. It's scoreable for smaller warbands, it's scoreable for large warbands. Yeah, it's just very strong. Not fast enough is Search and a Duel. Scores immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action takes the target out of action and that enemy fighter had 1 or more move and or charge tokens. That's bound to happen during the course of game. So that's also going to be a very solid card. Next is Out of Control. It's a hybrid. Resolve the Impetus ability for an enemy fighter, or the Impetus ability staggers a friendly fighter. So basically just move a fighter with a momentum counter into a place where they can't be pushed, or have a card that says they can't be pushed, or you could use one of the cards that react to your activation with giving like an adjacent enemy fighter your momentum counters instead. So this is also pretty solid actually. And last of the search objectives here, Wild Impetus. Score this immediately after the Impetus ability has been resolved for a 3rd or subsequent time in the same phase. So it's a little bit slower and not something you take if you only dip into this deck to take strong search objectives. And you are gonna take a fair share of cards to make sure that you score the card as well. But if you do actually invest in the deck, it's going to be very scoreable. Next up is Eager for the Fight. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more charge tokens and or is within 2 hexes of 1 or more enemy fighters. So you don't need charges on everyone. The one without then only needs to be within 2 hexes of an enemy fighter. So it could be slightly more tricky for larger warbands, but that's mainly for like 7+ warbands. Everyone else should be fairly fine with this card. Next is Fastest Round. For 3 glory if each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory and there are no enemy fighters in your territory. So this is Conquest and Denial, but not in the 3rd end phase. I mean, you could be really lucky to score it, and versus certain opponents you will be more likely to do so. If you're meeting a very defensive warband and you only have like 3 fighters, it could be a really good card, but it could also be very swing and a miss. So I'm dubious about including it in most cases, but could be one of these meme cards that you just include and fill up the last spot in hopes to get a lot of glory out of it, and it's not a big deal if you don't, I guess. But yeah, then we have this boring ass card. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move and or charge tokens. Need for Speed. That's pretty lame. It's 1 glory. That's all I'm going to say about that. Rapid Strike, score this in an end phase if the number of enemy fighters out of action is equal to or greater than the round number. For example, 2 or more enemy fights out of action in round 2. Yeah, that's a very solid card for aggro warbands. Basically everyone, to be fair. Very good card. And it's going to be scoreable versus basically everyone. Even resurrectable warbands are gonna struggle to keep up with the casualties. Running Rings is next. It's a duel. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to 1 or more enemy fights in enemy territory, and 2 or more of those friendly fighters each have 1 or more move and or charge tokens. So the last part is really easy, obviously. But 2 friendly fights being adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters could be a bit tricky and swingy. It's certainly doable, and I think 2 glory for it is fair, but it could also be counterproductive because the previous card requires kills and this requires you to not kill the enemies. So I'm not sure about the synergy here, and it could be a bit tricky. I think Rapid Strike is just way stronger. Too slow. Score this in an end phase if your warband has more move and charge tokens combined than 1 or more other warbands each have move and charge tokens. So this then, in contrast to Eager for the Fight, is probably better for larger warbands, while Eager for the Fight is better for smaller warbands. Yeah, so the synergy isn't perfect, but it shouldn't probably be, because it should, these kind of decks should be like not made for a specific type of size of warband. Kind of have to cherry pick what you need for your specific warband, and I think that's probably the way to go. So let's check the gambits here. Breakneck Pace is first up. Choose a friendly fighter, give the chosen fighter 1 momentum counter. So here we go. +2 move to that fighter in the next activation step. Yeah, it's a necessary card basically for aggro warbands. +2 move and the momentum mechanic to get going there. Can't stop reaction. Play this after a fighter's activation step. So friend or foe, push that fighter a number of hexes in one direction, not the boy band, equal to that fighter's momentum counters, then remove that fighter's momentum counters. So this allows you to dictate how they are pushed, which could set up some positional end phases, for example, instead of letting the opponent dictate. So yeah, it's probably very useful in certain situations. Devastating Charge. Choose a friendly fighter. Give the chosen fighter 2 momentum counters, +1 damage to that fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions in the next activation step. So both +1 damage and 2 momentum counters. This is great news for aggro teams and scoring this deck. Impossible Leap. Choose a friendly fighter, give the chosen fighter 1 momentum counter. That fighter has the flying trait in the next activation. Flying is nice, but like 2+ move and +1 damage is just better. So this is just a slightly weaker card than the other 2, but it's fine. Still need the momentum counters. Quick Uke, a reaction. Play this after the attack roll of an attack action that targets a friendly fighter. Give that fighter 1 guard and 2 momentum counters. Yeah, that's pretty nice and helps set up the Crashing Assault. Reckless Charge. Choose a friendly fighter. Give the chosen fighter 2 momentum counters. Also very nice. And +1 dice to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions in the next activation step. So, I mean, in the best case scenario, we could get +1 dice and +1 damage and like 4 momentum counters if we get them both in our hand at the same time. Yeah, it's a very good card. Roll with the punches. In the next activation step, when the friendly fighter is the target of an attack action, give that fighter 1 momentum counter, -1 damage to minimum 1 from the attack action until it has been resolved. Yeah, so the momentum counter is nice. The damage mitigation is telegraphed. It would just be so much better if it were a reaction rather than a played upfront card. Still, it could direct the attacks towards a fighter that you are less worried about, I guess. So in certain situations, it could save an important fighter. Screech to Halt. Reaction. Play this after an activation step. Choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more momentum counters. Remove the chosen fighter's momentum counters. So this could be played after any activation step, not just yours, and then you get to remove the momentum counters from friendly fighters. So if you want to end up in a very specific place without letting the opponent dictate how you get pushed around, this could help set up some of the important end phases here. Sia. Reaction. Play this after a fighter's activation. Choose a fighter adjacent to that fighter. Remove the activated fighter's momentum counters and give the chosen fighter 1 momentum counter. So very versatile card. since it could be played after a fighter's activation. So it could help put momentum counters on your fighters or remove them to put them on the opponent instead, if that's what you need to do. So that's a very versatile card. Slick Eyes is the last of the Ploy cards here, and it's a domain card. After a fighter's charge super action, give that fighter 1 momentum counter. This effect persists until the end of the round or until another domain gambit is played. So this gives out momentum counters to everyone charging in a round. So this could screw up the opponent's positional play because you get to push them around, and depending on how long the domain is persisting for, because it goes away until another domain gambit is played, this could really screw your opponent over and like force them to only move instead of charging if they want to end up in specific places. So it's a pretty nice card actually. Then we have the upgrades. Battering Ram is +1 move, reaction after the deal damage step of this fighter's attack action that targeted an adjacent enemy fighter. Give the target this fighter's momentum counters. So this negates the push and screws with the opponent, and you get +1 move. That's pretty nice. Just remember, if you want to score crashing assault, you need to actually have the momentum counters on your own fighters, but you don't need to take that card. Headlong Sprinter is +2 move. After this fighter's move action, give this fighter 2 momentum counters. Okay, so this happens before resolving like crashing assault, for example. So yeah, could help set up, score that card. Hurricane Dart is an attack action upgrade with 4 range. You hit on smash and you do 2 damage with it, and the dice characteristic is equal to 1 plus the number of this fighter's momentum counters. So that could, in the best case scenario, be like 4 maybe, possibly even higher, but that's pretty nasty for a 4 range 2 damage attack. Then we have Inertial Lance, which is also an attack action upgrade with 2 range 2 smash 2 damage. Reaction after the deal damage step of this attack action, give the target 1 of this fight's momentum counters. Yep, so another card to screw your opponent over and negate the push on your own fighters. And a decent attack action upgrade. Living Hurricane, this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions have stagger. After this fighter's move action, give this fighter 1 momentum counter. Yeah, it's fine. Moving Mark is, while this fighter has 1 or more move and or charge tokens, this fighter's defense characteristic is 2 shields, and this fighter cannot be on guard. After this fighter's move action, give this fighter 1 momentum counter. Yeah, 2 shields and 3 momentum counters. I'll take it. Standing Start +1 move, while this fighter has no move or charge tokens. When you activate this fighter, give this fighter 1 momentum counter. Okay, so when you already have moved, you don't get +1 move. But before the first move, you get the +1 move. Is that how it works? Confusing card, but I guess that's how it works. Translocating Step. If this fighter is in an edge hex and not within 1 hex of any enemy fighters, this fighter can use the following action. Give this fighter 2 momentum counters, then place this fighter in another edge hex within 3 hexes of 1 or more enemy fighters. Yeah, it could help set up scoring like fastest around if you have one fighter just being too far back in your territory to just get them forward, or maybe it could also help set up running rings, for example. Then we have Tumbler. You cannot give this card to a large fighter. This fighter's defense characteristic is 2 dodge, and this fighter cannot be on guard. This fighter cannot be staggered. So we have 2 defensive upgrades here, basically. 2 dodge and cannot be staggered. If a fighter cannot be staggered, you cannot also not flip feature tokens, so just keep that in mind. Inability to not be on guard isn't huge, but I think this card is fairly weak, to be fair. Unstoppable Warrior. While this fighter has 3 or more momentum counters, this fighter has innate Fury and Smash. After this fighter's successful attack action, break this card. So it's a one-off, but if you play a warband that already has like a faction-specific hit on both symbol cards like Star Performer, this could be really nice to buff up that accuracy for one important attack. So that's it. I think this deck is interesting. It's kind of hard to gauge, to be fair. I think the momentum counters could be really confusing, and probably a mechanic that you tend to forget a lot. You'll probably at least one time during the course of a game forget to actually resolve the impetus. But that aside, I think there are a fair few cards here as well that do very well on their own, like Beat to the Punch, Gale Force. Not Fast Enough is also pretty decent for aggro teams. And in the end phase, like Eager for the Fight is good for elite aggro warbands. Rapid Strike is also very solid. So even if you don't really take cards that gives out the momentum counters, you could still cherry pick some really good objectives here. So yeah, that's it for today. What do you think about this slightly, in my opinion, confusing rival deck? I think the Force of Frost just seems up front a bit stronger and easier to kind of wrap your head around. But I don't think this is a bad deck. I don't think this is the new Daring Delvers of bad, or like the Deadly Depths or whatever it was called. That was just horrible. Yeah, so I think this could probably do very well in the hands of a competent player. I think there are some really strong cards in here. So let me know what you think. Take care. Bye. This is Mats again, chiming in to thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment, and to not miss out on future content, ring the bell as well. And if you really liked this video, feel free to click the thanks button just below this video. And if you want to support me even further, you can now become a channel member and claim the title of Critical Focus fan. Until next time, take care, bye.